Hello and welcome to the FacDev Lounge podcast for Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick. I'm Dr. Sarah Gander, your host for the podcast. This is our Faculty Development Lounge podcast where we have chats and conversations with local DMNB folks and other educators in medicine. Today we have Dr. Jennifer Hall, who needs no introduction. She is our Associate Dean of Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick. All right, so welcome to the FacDev Lounge podcast, your podcast for faculty development for Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick. I'm Dr. Sarah Gander, a pediatrician here in St. John and the host of your podcast today. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Jennifer Hall, who anybody listening in the DMNB community would absolutely know who I mean. But for those of you who are from away, she is our Associate Dean for Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick, and a family physician here in St. John. And I'm proud to say a colleague and a friend for quite some time now here in St. John. So I'm so happy to welcome you, Jen. Welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. What a wonderful welcome. It's great to talk to you on the podcast.
Yeah, you too. I mean, I've been trying to get you on for a little while. You know, schedules are probably just a little bit busy for people like you these days.
Just a little bit. A lot of moving parts, but a lot of great people who are really trying to make things work in most interesting circumstances.
Well, we're recording this at a time that, well, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the sun shining outside and it's May and the April showers have come and gone and now the Mayflowers are coming out. And the title of this podcast is Why the Future Looks Bright. And who better to talk to than the one who's taking charge and leading our medical students than to talk about the future. What a crazy time we've had with COVID, obviously, but we've learned a lot.
We certainly have learned a lot, and who would have thought many, many months later after the pandemic began that we would still be trying to navigate through both the healthcare issues and the medical education issues that have happened as a result of COVID. And I think what's interesting, though, looking forward and looking to a brighter future, there's so much that we've been able to learn as we've navigated the COVID environment. And as a result, I think we're all going to be better educators. Our students will be better students. And even the public has started to really embrace things like virtual care and those kinds of things, which I think leaves a lot of opportunity for us going forward. I'm pretty excited about it, actually.
Well, I think the favorite part of the conversation I had as we were preparing for this was the giggle we had about how so many other people are getting used to virtual times. But DMNB, faculty and staff, I mean, we've been doing this since DMNB began.
That's right, Sarah. And it has been quite interesting because where DMNB was set up, a lot of our activity has been virtual. And sometimes we felt a little bit like we were a bit out in the, at the children's table sometimes, so to speak, and that everybody else was actually at the main table. But what's been so fascinating is that now we're all at the same table, and DMNB faculty and staff and students to a certain extent have helped teach those others on how you make this happen. So the pivot to a largely virtual environment actually has probably been a little easier for the DMNB folk than the Nova Scotia folks.
The students become the teachers, or it's all of a sudden like, oh, well, I think I said, the people who are getting used to it are like, hey, it's really annoying when you can't hear the sound or whatever. And we're just like, yeah, it is annoying. That's why we get really frustrated. And now, maybe these problems will get solved because isn't it true that you're a very optimistic person. So you're looking for the opportunity in all of this challenge and adversity.
Right. Yeah. People are tired, they are tired of it. And as, I'd said, I think we like to be with people and we like to socialize and such. And so we do see some of the more difficult things, like all the celebrations that are around students graduating, for instance. We've really had to damp that down a little bit. And although we're hoping to be able to have a modified version of our launch ceremony where we launch our graduates into their future medical careers. Again, it's not exactly like it has been in the past. And we're sad that we can't have as much togetherness around that. But with that said, the graduating class of 2021 has been very resilient and have
Mhm.
taken the opportunities where they can to do some really kind of creative things as they celebrate their launch into their next med ed journey.
Yeah, no, it's a great class. And I think that we've learned how to do the care. And they've been, like we've seen the students come through definitely with pediatrics. And there were some blips in the road because we were trying to kind of play catch up when there were some gaps in the stuff with COVID. But I think we're really excited to have that class go off. And they're probably interested in a change of scenery because many of them are going to different provinces and different environments. So that'll be kind of neat for them. But yeah, I think the losses and those celebrations and some of the networking and stuff that I know you enjoy too. And we were talking about your time as the president for the College of Family Physicians of Canada and what would it have been like if you had done that role without the travel. Any national role I've had meant a lot of back and forth, which was fun but tiring.
Exactly. You would miss meeting all the people and seeing people in the environments in which they're really really proud
Hmm.
and so that's difficult. Again, I think at Dalhousie Medicine New Brunswick, we have been so lucky. And the reason why I say that is when I talk to my colleagues across the country around even the clinical experiences that the medical students have had Med 1 through Med 4, we have had much more opportunity to have face-to-face learning in the Med 1 and 2 year and involvement in the clinical environment as well
Mhm.
compared to most other medical schools across the country. So we have been very lucky, and it's really due to the tenacity of the faculty here at DMNB, and we're really proud of our faculty that they've been able to actually make some of this happen when it couldn't happen in other jurisdictions. So
Mhm.
that's been a real blessing.
I keep thinking about the whole cavalry of people that came to my graduation at Memorial when I
Yes.
graduated and how that just like wouldn't happen now. I think 14 of my family came and
Wow.
I'm too old for Airbnbs, but it was some sort of renting of an apartment somewhere where they all crammed in and horse traded tickets to different events that they were allowed to go to because there's only two or three tickets for things. So feeling pretty
Exactly.
loved, but families will have to pivot too to kind of show that support and love too.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
good.
even what we've done with the launch ceremony is although each graduate only is allowed 3 people to come to the launch ceremony, we're going to live stream it. And so
Hmm.
again, who would have thought we would have done that even, a year and a half ago? So I think it's fun that we're able to incorporate more family members that way.
Oh my gosh, and it's great because I watched it last year, and as
Mm,
faculty, we can get in on the chat on the side, which
yes.
actually turned out to be really, really fun because then the students, who we haven't seen for a while, started all these side chats with us. And so
Yes.
then I mean, you were too busy to probably be into this, but when we were sitting in our office watching it, you could get into all these side chats with people. So you play catch up and you figure out all the things. And it was actually quite nice. So big push for faculty to watch the launch because it actually makes you feel really good.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we were talking about that, like how virtual things is sort of that great equalizer. I loved that comment that you had because I didn't think about it before this, but look at all the family members who now can attend the launch ceremony. But we were talking about it in the context of some of the disappointing news that the students have had recently about not being able to leave the province for their electives, which again is how you kind of look at it, but it is a disappointment. But wow, what if all of a sudden that expense and that time and you know, maybe that's a good thing. Or there's a positive way to look at it.
And I think you're right. I think there is a positive way to look at it. And although students weren't able to leave the province, some of them were able to go to Nova Scotia at the time because of the borders were open and to PEI for that matter. But the other thing that it has allowed us to do is explore a lot of the clinical opportunities within the province that maybe were underutilized by our
Mhm.
students. And so a number of faculty, especially in the more rural areas of the province, were inundated with elective requests and really engaged in that activity, which is a lot of fun in a lot of the different specialties. So I think that's shown us that there's quite a depth of expertise within the province, and we can all hold our heads high and say, even though students were not able to go elsewhere, they're matching to very competitive specialties, and the work that we do in our teaching does make a difference. So I think that's really important, and important for the students to know that those opportunities are there, and for the faculty to really understand the impact that they're having on the med students' education.
I think it's been a call to us to really be quite more dynamic with our elective experiences too. I know many of us have talked about how, I guess the word is probably something around hidden curriculum, where, typically we would have that apprenticeship model. People would come and hang out with us. They'd see the patients. And on a previous podcast with Nathra, who's a third-year student now at DMNB, we talked about how she came to a meeting with me that was about plugging a business case for a thing, because I'm the department head right now. And so she learned so much. I mean, it was, you have to pick and choose these things, but just an example of, wow, maybe we can model, how to conduct a good meeting, how to, do the other doctory things that we do that people don't think about. Maybe even wellness, what does that look like to model what I don't know, is somebody going to jump on the bike and follow you 50 kilometers around the peninsula? I would have gone, but I wasn't invited. No.
Excellent.
Sometimes you don't want the person following you, but, at other times, it's actually quite nice to bring a student on a walk with you or to go for lunch. And that's when kind of maybe the real magic is.
And I think that's an important part of medical school training, is the mentorship, which is what you're describing, around having those informal conversations and discussions about things that are beyond the curriculum as such. The other part of that comes into it is the leadership training, and so much of becoming a physician and the professional identity formation is not just the clinical aspects, but also how are you responsive to your communities? How do you take on those leadership roles, both within either medical education, clinical, administrative type things like you're doing as department head, or nationally, or any other way? How do you do that? And I think there's for some of us, you kind of fumble through and figure it out, and hopefully provide some good quality direction in those roles. But wouldn't it be kind of cool if we could actually teach that better to our medical students so that they're more prepared to take on those roles even earlier in their careers? So I think that's a great idea.
It's a good opportunity. I remember looking through the residency applications when I was at Queen's, and I don't know how much stake they put in what we thought, but we were asked to put some input into the medical students who are applying. And it's funny because what you want as a fellow resident, and actually what you want as a program director too, is a lot of those CanMed roles that are outside the curriculum competencies. Like if I was a program director somewhere and you were sending me a student, I'd be like, well, I'm going to trust that they pass their exams, but do I want to be around them?
Yes.
And maybe, I mean, I don't think I've ever met a medical student that I didn't want to really be around, but because I think DMNB's culture is really, really nice. But yeah, maybe those are the other CanMed roles around professionalism. I read an article in the Globe and Mail the other day. Now I forget the author's name, but I'll post it in the show notes. And it was talking about this dichotomy that no longer do we need to tolerate as a healthcare profession. So it used to be, well, I don't care how nice the surgeon is as long as they take my appendix out properly. Like, I don't need a smile. I just need
competence.
And I just think, well, wow. And this is the point of the article was, I don't think it needs to be if this or that. I think actually we can have both, and we have a social responsibility to produce physicians who are both compassionate and kind, and also can take your appendix out with no difficulty.
Exactly.
So I kind of think that's the frontier, right? Like, it's hard to sit in a classroom and be like, this is what professionalism looks like, but like, how can we model it and practice it? So yeah, future opportunity as well. Sorry, go ahead.
And that's what the public expects now, and I think we owe it to the public to be able to provide that. But like I said, you can't necessarily expect people just to come up with those skills. Let's at
Hmm.
least give them a half a chance and put something in front of them so they have that ability to do it.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, this has been an amazing class. They have shown a lot of resilience and ability to handle change. And, you mentioned the tenacity of faculty, but what else do you give it credit to?
I think there's a couple of things. One is from a DMMB perspective, I think to quote Dr. John Steeves, the first associate dean, we benefit from the power of small. And I think that people look out for each other. And I think it's been a time that we need to look out for each other. And I think that's really important. And our Office of Student Affairs have just done amazing things to try and support the students through these very difficult times. And sometimes it's been really difficult for them to a lot of family things that have happened in their world that really making choices about things that they shouldn't have to make choices about. But Student Affairs has been there to help guide them through it, to make good decisions. And I think that's been absolutely critical in all of this. And just trying to adjust expectations around what we can do, what we would like to do, but we can't, and just having that good communication, good collaboration to try and make things work the best they absolutely can. And sometimes, although you're trying to do the absolute very best, in some things we had to figure out what was good enough. And sometimes not everything can be the very best. It has to be good enough. And I think we were able to achieve some of that in very difficult situations. So the other piece that I think is absolutely critical is the staff at DMNB, and that's the people, whether they're the simulated patient educators, whether they're the administrative assistants, whether they're individuals who are in the lab helping the students go through their RIM projects. All of these people have really continued to be engaged in providing that education for the medical students and have really stepped up and done a lot of different things that not written in their job description, but that ownership of DMNB as a campus has really allowed them to feel that the student success is their success. So they really want to be part of it. So I think those are the sort of key factors that have sort of kept us going in this last little while.
Yeah, I love that concept of sometimes you just have to do B minus work because that's
Yes.
okay. And that's really hard with a bunch of doctors who are type A personalities and want to have
It
A plus all
is.
the time.
It
How
is.
many of it? Well, we must all joke about, you get the 99 out of 100 and you come home and your parents say, "What happened to that other point?"
Exactly. Exactly.
No, but at the same time, just that self preservation. Because my next question was going to be about faculty, because, well, earlier even I was thinking maybe we should be teaching our students how to say no sometimes, because that's certainly what I've learned in my life the hard way and now have a much better handle on. But I think teaching sometimes becomes that second thing. When we're trying to just survive this and get through this, as a physician, your mind goes to, well, I have to take care of my patients, I have to take care of my practice. And that the teaching sometimes was extra. Did you feel like there was a bit of a fall off of engagement with faculty, or was it harder this year, or are we just.
I think it's getting a little harder now. I think
Mm,
when the pandemic started and there was a lot of activity around pivoting education technologies and that kind of thing, and looking at what could be offered in the clinical environment, I think people really stepped up and were innovative in what they could do and what activities they could continue with,
mm,
and have done an amazing job as a result of it. I think, as we're getting into many, 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 many months, people are tired, and we do need to figure out how do we protect people from themselves and overcommitting for a long period of time. And looking at activities, for instance, over the summer and teaching activities, there are certainly some teaching activities that do need to continue. But looking at some things, we're saying, do we really need to do this summer? Or can we actually put that off to another time? And so we've had some conversations about what that looks like and respecting the fact that everybody needs to take some time away to go for a hike or go for a cycle or go for a sail or go for a walk, to really energize them. I think one thing that the Faculty of Medicine has done, and we're starting to see some of that programming rolling out, is there is a new Assistant Dean Faculty Wellness, and that's Dr. Angie Cooper, who's a psychologist, and she's based in Halifax. And she's developing some strategies to maintain faculty wellness across both campuses. And we've certainly recognized that in student affairs and resident affairs, that curriculum, in order to maintain really good balance and wellness, is important for our learners. But in order for our learners to be good at that, we need to model it a little bit. So she's working on a lot of strategies to say, how do we keep our faculty well, especially when people are pretty tired at this point in time. So we look forward to some of that coming out and really encouraging people to be part of that.
Well, I couldn't have planted that better because she will be on our podcast next month.
Awesome.
Angela Cooper. So
awesome.
she's excellent. And I've had a couple of conversations with her now, and where the alignment is with getting information out on this podcast, but also aligning with some of the New Brunswick Medical Society's efforts and wellness. And so, yeah, stay tuned to that. Thanks for the shameless plug, Dr.
Absolutely.
Hall. And so in particular, I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking about faculty and how, when they're trying to just do their yearly things and make sure things are taken care of, you want to be able to take advantage of some of these things that Dalhousie's offering. We want to know who the faculty is so we can reach out to them. This all rests in their faculty appointments, which
Right.
I think is one of those black box words where people are just like, oh yeah, I think that's done. But how do we actively make sure that we're sort of counted and known for DMNB and therefore part of the family?
Sure. And I think that's absolutely critical, Sarah, is that we encourage everyone to look for the opportunity for a faculty appointment, because it does, as you say, open resources from the university to the faculty, which extend beyond their teaching roles, but in other aspects of their career. So I think that's really important. It allows faculty to perhaps connect with other people with similar interests.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, often faculty will say, I got a really good idea about a potential project, but I don't necessarily have the time or the resources to be able to do it on my own. But perhaps if I connect with another faculty member who may be based anywhere in the Maritimes, there may be an opportunity to actually move some projects forward. And we start to see that as people connect with others in different parts of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and PEI to look at things that are of particular interest to them. A couple of the departments, for instance, the emergency department has looked at actually formalizing some of these more maritime activities. And so they're trying to get many of the faculty members together during a lot of their rounds and those kinds of things to really create that family that you talked about that encompasses people from all over. I think the other thing that the faculty appointment does is it really allows teaching and research to kind of come to a bit of the top of the page sometimes, where sometimes that's buried. And I find often patients will be very interested in knowing that the physician who's caring for them actually teaches for the university.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that often patients will comment on about, oh, well, I guess if they're teaching for the university, then
they must know what they're doing.
They must know what they're doing, or at least know how to figure out what they're doing. So I think that's something that's quite important. And I've seen patients comment on that. And also that we know having students with us sort of raises our game. It most certainly does. And when you're trying to explain a particular illness or a physical finding to a medical student, you better know it. So
there's actually nothing worse than them saying, because I find our DMNB students particularly are very curious and ask lots of questions, or they at least feel comfortable to. Yeah, there's nothing worse than being like, well, I don't know, because I've always done it that way. You're like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
There's probably a better reason than that.
Exactly. And I think for some faculty too, who beyond what I've described have interests in a slightly more academic career, and they're looking to be promoted and looking to publish and those kinds of things. And as they engage more and more in the university, again, more doors open up. And I think that's wonderful to have those opportunities to connect with colleagues and really highlight some of the amazing stuff that's going on in New Brunswick in major ways.
Yeah. So I put in the show notes the link to the DMNB page and the folks that you contact if you are listening to this and going, well, I don't know, am I sorted out or am I not sorted out? Somebody sort me out.
Exactly.
And so there's the contact for the person who will sort you out in terms of your faculty appointment. Not to mention the fact that that is how you also get financial compensation for your work. And
That's
so
right.
if that is your incentive in this life, that is important as well. Wonderful. Well, what are your parting words for us today, Dr. Hall? We're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. How do you want to leave this chat today?
Well, I guess I just want to say thank you, Sarah, for facilitating these podcasts. And, as you said at the beginning, the future is bright. And after 10 years of DMNB, wow, just amazing things faculty, staff, and students are doing. And what's even more exciting now is some of our graduates are coming to work in New Brunswick and are starting to be the teachers and the researchers of the next phase of DMNB. So seeing that and seeing the young faculty saying, oh, I want to teach, and I remember sitting in that classroom and I really want to be involved, is just a wonderful thing. And it makes that family of DMNB even so much more special as we head post-pandemic and into the next 10, 20 years of DMNB. So it's been a pleasure to be able to chat with you.
Yes. And, we created this podcast before the COVID pandemic even hit. So look at how progressive we are and thoughtful we are.
Exactly.
We were ready.
Yeah, way ahead of the curve.
Way ahead of the curve. Wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining us today. And thanks everyone for listening to the Fact of Lounge podcast for Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick. Have a good day. Thank you for listening to the Fact of Lounge podcast. Please leave us a review on iTunes, YouTube, or SoundCloud, and even a comment on some ideas for future podcasts. Thank you very much and have a great day.